So, Excellencies, dear ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome, willkommen, dobrodošli, to all of you who are with us here live at the Trusteeship Council Chamber of the United Nations headquarters in New York, or virtually via UN Web TV. My name is Miroslav Polza. I'm representing IAAI, International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, a civil society organization based in Klagenfurt am Wörthersee in Austria. We have gathered to discuss the topic United Nations System Partnering with Civil Society on Resource Mobilization for Sustainable Development in the format of a side event to the 6th session of United Nations General Assembly's Open Working Group on Sustainable Development Goals. I'm joined here on the panel by our co-organizers, Lysinka Ulatowska from the Association of World Citizens and Institute for Planetary Synthesis, and Sharon Hamilton-Getz from NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values and Global Concerns, New York, and a group of outstanding experts dealing with different aspects of the big challenge of engaging civil society and especially youth in the work and goals of United Nations system. And I will have the pleasure to introduce all of our panelists in more detail as we proceed in our program. Our side event is a contribution to the deliberations of Open Working Group on Sustainable Development Goals on Global Partnership for Sustainable Development. And it's basically a call on to the OWG to design Sustainable Development Goals in a way that these SDGs can become the foundation of a global partnership for sustainable development that is being shared and supported by 7 billion global citizens. The rationale for this call is that these 7 billion global citizens make in their everyday lives billions of resource use decisions that are relevant for sustainable development goals, and because we believe that sustainable development goals need to find their way into the hearts and the minds of 7 billion global citizens so that the global multi-stakeholder partnership for sustainable development, which includes governments, private sector and other societal institutions, will work with more ambition towards SDG implementation. So much as an introduction to the topic of our panel. But before starting our presentations and discussions, I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate UN system and UN member states for the very open and participatory process in which sustainable development goals are being formulated here under the leadership of Ambassador Csaba Kőrösi and Ambassador Macharia Kamau. It is very encouraging and positive to see civil society being given the floor to share our knowledge and insights into design of sustainable development goals. A great thank you once again for this to the UN system and to the member states. So let us start with the presentations. And I will start with my presentation of the GloCha system, which is a transformative global multi-stakeholder partnership for engagement of global citizens in sustainable development goals. And as you have heard already from the title of these presentations, it's relatively complex. It is systemic innovation. And as I want you at the end of my presentation to go out of this room with a positive feeling and with the wish to hear more and to engage with us, so I decided to communicate this systemic innovation message through 5 pictures, 5 images. You see, one, it's this image of the drop in the water, drop in the ocean, which is the symbol for new action. It's the images 15-15-15, GloCha and Global Youth Music Contest that represent action. And it's the symbol of the view on Lake Wörthersee from the city of Klagenfurt, where we are building a local partnership for the global partnership for sustainable development, and where we are going to meet. And I hope that my presentation will incite in you the wish to meet, to be with us at that place in June next year. So, what's the new thinking? It is, as was the slogan also of our event, many drops of water make a mighty ocean. So it's really that we look at sustainable development goals, at goals that want to make sure that the present generation, all people on Earth and also future generations have the resources that they are needing for their well-being. And we can look at these resources as global commons and that are co-owned by all humanity, and that we are trustees of these resources for future generations. And that's the wonderful point for our event, to be here at the Trusteeship Council chamber at the UN. It's really, it couldn't be a better place really to inspire us regarding how we could in a responsible way make the architecture for resource use for future generations. And the main point regarding new thinking is everybody can and shall contribute. That's also somehow the main message of the GloCha system, which you will hear more about now. And the question is regarding this action for the common good, for the global common good, who will take the lead? We can see that there are not many countries really very eager to take the lead. It's private sector has its own agenda. So it's really on us, on every global citizen, and there's a need to organize this new passion and new vision and ambition to do something and to connect the people who are working in this direction. And therefore, the leadership, our message is a shared vision and a shared information system about actions for the global common good can connect the people, can connect you, can connect everybody in a global community for sustainable development. That's this new multi-stakeholder partnership we want to develop. And this is a public sector innovation, because every global citizen is given the role as a public goods provider in economic terms. And the vision is to connect global citizens, the drops of water, with sustainable development goals, with this ocean of resources that the humanity and future generations need for sustainable development. And the economic concept for this is local provision of global public goods. And the concept is identifying and incentivizing global public good added value of local action of citizens and also cities. And it's not that much about money, but it's primarily about information. We really need to provide feedback loops of information between global goals and individual decision making, and incentivizing when something goes in the right direction and this kind of things. So test how these ideas and this concept, whether they are really viable or so, is our 15-15-15 formula, which says that it was adopted as a voluntary commitment in Rio as a result of the work of the Rio +20 Issues Cluster on Innovation. And it says that global civil society commits to mobilize 15 million people taking action for sustainable development, and that this human resources are combined with 15 billion euros that are channeled with this vision of multi-stakeholder engagement of citizens in sustainable development, and by the year 2015. That's what civil society gives, and in exchange, civil society asks for new forms for participation in global sustainable development governance. In economic terms, that means to increase the supply and the demand side for local public goods, meaning these are public goods that have a local dimension and also a global dimension. And the call to the open working group here is to design entry points in SDGs implementation architecture for reporting and monitoring by global citizens. How we want to achieve this, and many people have good ideas, but the one USP that we have is our Global Youth Music Contest. It's some kind of nuclear power plant for social energy, through which we are connecting with global youth. And we have had a very successful first round in the context of Rio +20 conference, and we are planning to launch the second round in June next year in Klagenfurt. And this will be connected with music and action for sustainable development approach, asking young people to commit themselves to do something for sustainable development, to formulate global challenges, giving pledges. And we will build the information systems to geographically locate them, to monitor their implementation, to allow for crowd evaluation, participatory evaluation of the global added value of these activities. And the last image I want to share with you is this photo from the terrace of Maria Loreto Palace in Klagenfurt on the Lake Wörthersee, where in 2011 we have had the first workshop for the Global Youth Music Contest with 30 young people from all around the world. And that's the place where we'll meet again in June next year. And I hope that you will join us there. And it's important, this place, because we have a very strong partnership with the regional government, with the city of Klagenfurt, and it's a local partnership for building a global partnership for sustainable development. And we will also establish there enterprise, global challenges, information and communication technologies, which will function as a social enterprise. And with this, I would conclude my presentation, and I hope that you liked these images, that they resonated well with you. And if you would want to connect with us, you would be very welcome. It's a very open concept. It's with the Global Commons idea, so that really is joint governance and joint engagement. And as it was said, every drop counts, every global citizen counts, and so I hope that we can work on this together in the future. Thank you for your attention. And to build on this, I would like to show you now the video message of the Regional Minister for Sustainable Development and Energy from our province of Carinthia, where I come from. And it's also a region which is ethnically diverse. We have two ethnic groups, a German-speaking majority and a Slovene-speaking minority. Therefore, also this willkommen, dobrodošli. Willkommen is German, dobrodošli is Slovene, which is also my mother tongue. So you will see that there's quite a good connection we have with the local government, and this is also something unique, I think, for civil society organization to have this open and deep partnership.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I, as Regional Minister for Sustainable Development of Austria's province of Carinthia, contribute some thoughts via video message to your event. As you probably know, one of the initiators of today's event is Mr. Miroslav Polzer with his organization IAAI, Center for Global Challenges and Innovation, which has its headquarters in the capital of our province in the city of Klagenfurt am Wörthersee. Myself and my colleagues of regional government and regional parliament of Carinthia already had a chance to hear about the concepts and ambitious visions of IAAI GloCha. I am very much convinced that the concepts IAAI is working on are very important. Innovative partnerships of the public sector with civil society on sustainable development are very important, not only on global level, but also on the regional government level here in Carinthia. I would like to use the opportunity of this video message to express my support and the best wishes. The International Conference Sustainable Development, Innovation and Youth, organized by IAAI on the 5th and 6th of June next year in Klagenfurt at Lake Wörth, will be an important milestone to which I kindly invite you. With this invitation to visit us in Carinthia next year, I would like to conclude by wishing you much success for your deliberations on sustainable development goals, and I very much look forward to welcome many of you at IAAI GloCha Conference June next year in Klagenfurt.
Thank you very much, Regional Minister Rolf Holub. Vielen Dank. And with this, we come to the next point. We have invited Chantaline Carpentier from UNDESA, Sustainable Development Officer and Major Groups Program Coordinator. But she informed us 3 hours ago that she doesn't feel well because it was very demanding this whole week, and she apologizes. And, but still, I would like to put into the room the question that I asked her to focus it on. It's when a young person or a global citizen in general hears about the United Nations and about goals of the United Nations, where are the entry points for if somebody wants to become active? And I think it's a systemic gap here, that it's only possible about institutions, major groups, and a very lengthy accreditation process. But nowadays, in the time of modern information and communication technologies, people get excited for something, and a few days later, they might not be that much excited anymore. So it is needed to have corridors and avenues for engaging them immediately through modern information and communication technologies when they are ready to do so. And they also don't have very often access to these well-organized major group structures. So the idea was to claim that we are filling a gap and to hear her background. So in the discussion later on, I would kindly invite you to comment also on this, whether you think there is a gap or that we are just not seeing something that is there already. But really, with our multi-stakeholder partnership for sustainable development, GloCha, which puts global citizens and their resources in the center of these efforts for sustainable development, we think that there are great potentials for very big impact and for the future, even for systemic integration with the United Nations. And with this, I give the floor to my esteemed colleague, Lesinka Ulatowska, from the Institute for Planetary Synthesis and World Alliance of Global Citizens, who will speak about a partnership of people to manage the impact each of us is having on Earth system. And thank you very much for working with us on this event, and happy to have you here.
Thanks, Miro. What an exciting project, the GloCha project. I'm so looking forward to hear how it develops further, and who knows, we might all join up and come and visit you in Austria. The partnership of people to manage the impact each of us is having on the Earth system is really what I'd like to talk about from a commons perspective. A number of you here in the room are members of the Commons Cluster, and so the organizations that I represent are founding members of that cluster. Such a partnership seems impossible in a world where everyone is scrambling for resources and in the process of destroying the Earth system's capacity to support human life. Fortunately, there are other aspects to humanity which come to light when we look at our world from a commons perspective and hear projects like the GloCha project. I should like to describe why a commons approach is so conducive to sustainable development, and how we can use a commons approach, and how it be central to an SDG on managing the Earth system, and also how a commons approach would help us at every step of its implementation. Commons partnerships between people who manage their resources together so that all benefit from the outcome. So commons is not just a natural resource, it's people managing it so that they benefit from the outcome. Commons create partnerships to steward and manage water resources, soil quality, forests, plant and animal species. And there are thousands of commons communities who live sustainably within their respective global footprints. Commons partnerships are characterized by caring, sharing, and a sense of community from local to global levels. Because commons partnerships tend to meet needs that are not being met in other ways, They often connect people across national boundaries and unite people in developed and developing countries, as in the fair trade initiatives, information exchange, sharing of research and tools for sustainable development. As commons partnerships, they involve all stakeholders in meeting their own needs, that they foster commitment and engagement. Cooperatives are the business branch of the commons. Summing up the International Year of Cooperatives in 2012, the Secretary-General mentioned that according to the UN statistics, cooperatives have a total of 1 billion members worldwide, 1/7 of the world population. So, commons partnerships are important building blocks for sustainable communities at every level. The Earth system on which all human life depends should be recognized as a global commons and managed responsibly by all. At present, it's managed by all people jointly without them realizing the role they play, while all are suffering the consequences of poor management. Keeping the total impact of humankind on the Earth system to within those boundaries that support human life is a matter of life and death, violent death through cataclysms, or death after long-suffering illnesses due to deprivation and poisoning. Here the global partnership is failing. It would be important, therefore, to have an SDG on conscious holistic management by all people of their impact on the Earth system. That would involve all people managing and benefiting from the Earth system together, i.e. a commons approach. We therefore join with the United Nations Task Team for Post-2015 Development and call urgently for increased involvement by all stakeholders worldwide in responsible decision-making. Since Rio 20, such large-scale involvement has become quite possible. With the competent assistance of the UN Secretariat, again, 1 billion people were reached in the span of just 6 months for their views. And among those reached are some of the most marginalized. These views are already feeding the discussions being held to the Open Working Group. And each day a part of the summary is put out by the NGLS for all to see. Here, I have a copy, and tomorrow you'll see it on your desk. So please look at it. How can commons approaches help us to implement such an SDG? Firstly, we can use commons approaches to manage the Earth system, and I'll mention an example. Secondly, people can be educated to make decisions constructively as informed equals with diverse perspectives and experience, and that is a commons approach. And people can participate in generating and assessing approaches to implementation of the SDG. This was worked out in part at an international conference held in Oporto, Portugal in November this year. It was attended by experts on planetary boundaries, environmental lawyers, experts on metrics, and educators. And the keynote speaker was GloCha, who was one of the candidates for the President of the General Assembly in 2012. So here is one commons approach by which all people could become partners by managing their individual impact on the Earth system cooperatively. And that would have 7 steps. The Earth system is proclaimed a global commons to be managed by and for the benefit of all people and nature. That's step 1. Secondly, ecocide would be proclaimed a crime against peace. Thirdly, the use of depletable resources are very strictly capped. Each person could be apportioned a non-transferable share of the global footprint, and then would guarantee that human impact would stay within the 1950 limits. Instead of being taxed on our work, we would pay a fee for the use of any part of the global commons. And the monies collected would go to a fund to restore the global commons and a possible basic income for all people. The fund could be administered by the UN's Trusteeship Council. But people would need to be educated to function both in harmony with the Earth system and also to make decisions together. To be prepared for the task, people would have to learn to sharpen their intuitive connection to the Earth, which is the umbilical cord to Mother Nature. That's our intuition. Learning should also be based on a bioregion. For instance, there could be daily reports, like we now have weather reports, and people would know the status of their environment within their bioregion and understand how their bioregion is nested within the biosphere of the Earth. They would also have to learn to make decisions in a mutually supportive and constructive manner. Here are some elements of the education that would also promote a commons approach. Learning would be embedded in real life. Students would learn to take responsibility also for their inner feelings and inner environment, and for their outer environment. Students and others would link locally, nationally, regionally, and globally, and students would also link with their communities. There would be a bias towards experiential learning, so the nature of this education would be connection to every side of one's life. We have a draft SDG on education as well for the Commons. Everything proposed exists today. The question is how to bring all this together into one system which is understood and supported by all. Here, Kul Gautam suggested an interim step that has been used by the UN repeatedly, namely the formation of a commission of eminent personalities who would work together with all stakeholders worldwide to explore how to transform the Earth system into a global commons which would be managed by and for the benefit of all people and nature. To bring all this together, a commons approach is already useful in managing sustainable development and helping to regenerate business where the gap between the haves and the have-nots has become too great. It's already helping many people manage their combined impact on the Earth system. It provides educational tools that will help people make joint decisions harmoniously. It can help to involve all people in thinking along with a commission of eminent personalities that would prepare a report on the way forward for all. And finally, a commons approach enables all people to be at the very heart of the management of the Earth system itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lysinka. I forgot also to mention before that Lysinka is the coordinator of the United Nations Major Groups Commons Cluster.
Thank you.
And it's a very important cluster and very inspiring. Thank you for these very concrete suggestions. With this, according to the program, we will come now to the video message of Michael Platzer, who is the head of the Vienna Liaison Office of the Academic Council on the United Nations System, which is our partner already for several years, and much of the GloCha system, the rationale behind and the scientific work has been elaborated with the Academic Council on the United Nations System and with Michael Platzer personally. We've had, for instance, also a workshop in Waterloo at the ECON's annual meeting 2011 about human rights and human responsibilities with regard to sustainable development. This is only as a background information so that you will know that Michael Platzer is a very important person for our work.
The Academic Council of the United Nations in Vienna cooperates very closely with the International Association for the Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges. We've done a number of projects together. The Youth Music Challenge. We've done a series of symposia. We are very keen on promoting knowledge, a knowledge base for the global problems. We look forward to expanding our circles, going global, so to speak. We already have members in many countries contributing to the song contest, but also substantive contributions on how the world can be a better place. I am constantly amazed by the enthusiasm of the young people for these causes. I am driven by our young people for an improved world. And in short, it's all about global citizenship. It's about doing something in the community, doing something on the environment, on human rights, with women's rights, against corruption. Youth should get active with an intelligence base. And we believe there should be a revolution in a sense. There should be a new social justice in the world, and that we can measure the improvements in terms of justice, in terms of proper distribution of public goods, cleaning the environment, cleaning the water, and making access to energy available to all. So we look towards a better, fairer world, and I think that's the essence of the innovative approaches to global challenges. We have a conference in Vienna held often here at the university and at the United Nations about different sensitive topics at the UN. This year we're choosing the topic, have the UN policies changed? And I think it's quite evident that UN policies have changed in reaction perhaps to scientific knowledge, improved knowledge, but also to the external environment. And so we will ask the directors of major organizations based in Vienna to discuss with scientists and with academics and graduate students how effective these changes are about the United Nations. We have a regional academy which goes into details on diverse UN subjects. These young students will then present their papers in front of a jury at the United Nations. We foster this kind of exchange, team building among young people in the region, but also beyond the region. And we look forward to many hundred people coming here to Vienna to discuss these topics in a serious way, but also hopefully in a social way, so that friendships are made and continuing drive for knowledge and for improvements. And hopefully some of these young people also join international organizations, NGOs, and keep driving campaign forward.
Will take place 15th to 17th of January next year in Vienna. And with this we come to another highly esteemed and dear friend and colleague, Sharon Hamilton-Getz from the NGO Committee on Spirituality, Values and Global Concerns here in New York. And Sharon will speak about the role of spirituality and values in civic engagement for sustainable development goals. Sharon, the floor is yours.
Many thanks to Dr. Miroslav Polzer and IAAI GloCha, and also he was our Spirit of the UN Award recipient for Youth Outreach this year. Also for this transformative partnership of the United Nations, civil society, youth, and all participants for this opportunity to participate and to offer the following statement of CSVGC New York Spiritual Council Working Group on the Post-2015 Development Agenda on Sustainable Development. The Congo Committee on Spirituality, Values and Global Concerns hereby submits a statement on the post-2015 Development Agenda on Sustainable Development with the aim of contributing to the implementation of the intergovernmentally agreed Sustainable Development Goals and commitments in the Rio +20 outcome document, The Future We Want, Agenda 21, the program of the further implementation of Agenda 21, or the Johannesburg Plan of Implementation of the World Summit on Sustainable Development. CSBGC New York proposes the following initiatives to complement the government-led action in realizing Sustainable Development Goals. We propose focusing on thematically driven action networks, which have proven to be useful in driving commitments, building capacities, and aligning people to common goals. CSBGC New York proposes inclusion of people from other important sectors in society to become action players in contributing to the discussion on sustainable development. Our proposal is to find a way forward for the UN to establish partnerships with the following additional sectors of society in order to further strengthen the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'd like to thank all the representatives who actually led the groups that compiled information and put it into the statement, which I'm reading. The first was the spiritual leaders. The proposal is for a new constituency, spiritual leaders to be adopted as the 10th major group, to actively engage in the discussion on sustainable development. Since people of faith constitute more than 80% of the global population who cherish the environment as a gift from the divine source and who see themselves as stewards of a legacy of compassion and unselfishness to pass on to succeeding generations, this would provide a direct avenue of dialogue and education which can address the countering prevailing values of self-centeredness and overindulgence, which impede effective implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Spiritual leaders would consequently respond to the clarion call that demands inclusion of interfaith, interspiritual education in all the facets of the post-2015 discussions and conclusions. Those working on these issues within the UN system, as well as those contributors outside the system, must see to it that any and all talks about the new development agenda must emphasize the values and inclusiveness, respect, and unconditional acceptance of all faiths and of all peoples within the UN as well as beyond, and that this sector need to be one of the legs upon which will stand the new development agenda. Spiritual leaders are to work hand in hand with the secular implementation in the institutions and leaders in the UN community to see to it that those writing the post-2015 development agenda understand that all decisions must be conscious of the need to understand that all people, governments, and the development goals themselves have to include awareness that it is not just the physical that will be the basis of the new goals, but that the body, mind, and spirit must all be considered together holistically for this to take place. The second is the aging. CSBGC New York recognizes that the aging is an overlooked sector and proposes that issues related to the elderly should be included in the discussion on the post-2015 development agenda. We recognize the ever-growing numbers of older persons globally as greater opportunities for better health means the percent of the population of this cohort is growing rapidly. Older persons should be treated with dignity and respect, valuing their life experiences and acknowledging their intrinsic gifts. Instead of elderly, the title should be changed to the aging or the older persons. There are several age groupings of older persons, the young old and the older old, and each segment may have different needs based on their abilities. There is a need for supportive services attuned to those differences. We should work to remove ageism in all areas of discourse and actions. We need to encourage intergenerational efforts. And greater members of older persons are living alone, so supportive services are needed without bias as to economic and cultural backgrounds. Opportunities for expression of their wisdom, talents, and abilities need to be available at all ages. There needs to be awareness that older persons can fall prey to abuse and exploitation, and efforts to educate about this issue and developing solutions to address it must be undertaken on all levels of society. The next is women. CSVGC New York recognizes the need to emphasize women in the sustainable development discussion, as women represent 50% of the population and play essential roles in the development, prosperity, and well-being of society. Since the issues of leadership, equality, and employment can be remedied through education and training to respect basic human dignity and worth, CSVGC New York proposes education as a primary focus for uplifting the plight of women. It is important to provide education for women and girls, particularly in developing countries, and more effort should be made in educating girls rather than boys. An educated woman can provide for her family and contribute to the well-being of the communities. She will promote women's health and well-being and give birth to healthy children and communities for a sustainable future. Education helps prevent girls from being victims to human trafficking and child labor, and through education they will not sell their bodies, and education teaches women not to tolerate abuse, inequality, or disrespect. The next is Indigenous peoples. CSVGC New York emphasizes the importance of including Indigenous peoples in the discussions on sustainable development. Indigenous people have a historical relationship with their lands and have developed cultural and holistic traditions concerning their lands over many generations. Indigenous communities have been consistent in devoting themselves to the care of the lands and the environment in view of the interrelationship between the natural environment and its sustainable development and the social, economic, and physical well-being of Indigenous people. And environmentally sound and sustainable development should recognize, promote, and strengthen the role of Indigenous people and their communities. Environmental education should recover, recognize, and utilize Indigenous history and local cultures, as well as promote cultural, linguistic, and ecological diversity. This implies acknowledging the historical perspective of Native peoples as a way to change ethnocentric approaches, and environmental projects should empower all people and promote opportunities for grassroots democratic change and participation. This means that communities must regain control of their own destiny. Indigenous people should develop and implement their own plans for a sustainable future, and their efforts will serve as a catalyst for implementing the policy at a larger scale. Youth, and this is the last one. CSVGC New York stresses the importance of the active participation of young people in decision-making on the discussion. All innovation and implementation supporting SDGs will support a culture of peace that will include goals that include harmony with nature and Mother Earth while reducing poverty, economics, spirituality, allowing for expression of human rights, and values and ethics to accountable actions for the common good of all. On sustainable development, we also recognize the need to promote intergeneration dialogue and solidarity. Youth need to participate in policy-supportive programs, in deliberations for sustainable development, governance, and future generations have the right to enjoy their freedoms of choice in deliberating sustainable development. Governance. Governments should enhance youth leadership and execution in various areas and improve their quantity and quality of ecological safety and sustainable activities that involve youth in a comprehensive, practical, and constructive manner. We trust that all implementations of SDGs will move closer to a culture of peace and be realized through harmony to nature and Mother Earth, while reducing poverty of economics and spirituality, and at the same time include values, ethics, and human rights for the common good of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. With this, we come to the next speaker, Mr. Ravi Karkara, Senior Advisor on Children and Youth Issues to UN Habitat and UN Millennium Campaign, and really one of the most outstanding figures regarding the youth agenda in the UN system. We've met only a few days, but I think we are almost brothers. So please.
Thank you very much, Miro, and really gratitude to all the panelists and also the government of Austria. It's really an honor to speak here. I think you really hit the nail on its head when you talk about innovation and young people. And you asked me to also cover it in terms of UN systems engagement on young people. Many of you will be surprised, the first time ever the UN, its own earlier form as League of Nations, actually engaged with young people was 1936. And it's been 1936, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and now we're sitting here today on the 12th December 2013, still discussing, and very frustrated, and people like Patrick and others who have been really championing the youth engagement for a long time. And for me, I've had the honor to really work with UN colleagues, and as part of, formally as the co-chair of the UN Interagency Network on Youth Development, we basically really demanded that UN system needs to deliver more on young people. 1.8 billion young people, we still are grappling with issues of promises made in Agenda 21, creating a major group on children and youth, and then having this foresight of saying that let's have young people engage. 20 years since then, we're still having this discussion. I think it's absolutely appalling. And I don't know if I'll be still in my job tomorrow, but absolutely I'm very, very vocal. I think there are many, many issues here. I think one that we need to recognize that a UN system is really taking a very important stride in engaging with young people worldwide. And I'll give you some concrete examples. I think we need to really unpack the UN system and look at it from a local, national, regional, and global processes. So I think when it comes to young people's engagement, we really need to create opportunities where young people can open up opportunities in decision-making in local context, in subnational context, and national context, and regional and global processes. And I really want to reiterate Sharon's point that we need to focus on the most marginalized. So where are young women participating in decision-making processes? Where are indigenous young people? Where are minority young people? Where are young people with disabilities participating in such processes? And I think we really are trying to open up doors. UN Habitat led a process called Youth 21, which is very much inspired by Agenda 21, and we were able to make some very strong recommendations. And the first recommendation which came out was creating a special rapporteur on youth issues. And now we are very happy to say that we have the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, which I think should have been done 20 years ago when we had the Braga Youth Action Plan request on creating a special rapporteur on human rights of youth. But we are not giving up there. We also are advocating with many member states and youth-led organizations, ICMIOs and others, to really create a UN permanent forum on youth issues. I think enough has happened that we have these silo effects of having a youth discussion on reproductive health, and we have an urban youth discussion, we have employment youth discussion, we have an HIV/AIDS youth discussion, we have an education youth discussion. Everything is so fragmented, and I think we really need to consolidate and bring all the conversations together so that we can create a permanency. So there is a permanency not only in participation, but also permanency in accountability framework when it comes to young people's participation, and really creating those intergenerational dialogue, as you said, so that we have intergenerational dialogue between the duty bearers and right holders, in this case young people, so that they can become active citizens, and also their civic engagement can be enhanced so that they can give back to the community in the local communities or subnational, national, and regional processes. So I think for us, young people's engagement, really, I'm honestly really sick of conferences. I've done enough conferences all my life. I've facilitated many conferences, and I'm really looking at systemic changes, institutionalized changes that can create changes at an institutional layer. And I think UN system can really play a critical role with support from member states and very important support from civil society actors, especially youth-led organizations and youth-led initiatives. So that's what I've been grappling with. And as a point of frustration, I recently wrote a new publication, which will be out very soon, which is called Youth 21, which is about youth aid architecture. And I took on the question about where is the global aid accountability when we look at OECD DAC and emerging economies, and where are they really investing on youth cohort? And within that youth cohort, how are they investing on priorities which are prioritized by young people themselves. Do we really know what young people are saying out there? We have so many conferences, so many meetings, and I know that young people, and I was just assessing the declaration from 1936 of these young people who met in 1936 in Geneva and made a declaration after the World War I. And then you pick up the declaration made recently, say a year ago, and you assess what are the similarities. One thing which comes out very strongly is, and I'm waiting for Natasha to also speak later, young people are saying that we are assets to engage with. We want to be partners in processes of social transformation. Work with us. Don't see us as us versus them. Really create those intergenerational opportunities. And I think there I would really like to now come back into the context of SDGs and post-2015 agenda. I'm also the focal point on post-2015 and young people in the UN system, working as a sub-working group chair on post-2015 and young people. And one big challenge which was given to us, and when I'm working for UN Millennium Campaign, was that how do we really bring young people to participate? And I think 2 years ago, when I was asked to write some kind of a brainstorm paper on the UN Development Group's paper on youth engagement in post-2015, and many people came back to me and said, MDGs did not see any engagement of young people. I don't think anybody will open up the doors for young people to participate. And that's when we really talked about strengthening young people's participation in national consultations. We had 88 national consultations worldwide, and many of us know that young people came in with numbers and flooded national consultations. We had 11 thematic consultations which have taken place, and we've seen how young people have came with very strong statements in thematic consultations on health, in thematic consultations on education and peace and security, on employment, governance, and these are very strong statements. But I think we also saw very critically the high-level panel, and I think culminating into Indonesia, which got a huge number of young people coming and saying that, we need to be listened to. And I really would give a lot of respect to the government of Indonesia, which really brought in and kind of really brought all the discussion together and said, okay, young people, you need to come together. And I'm really looking on to your leadership when it comes to implementing the post-2015 agenda. So what are we really looking for? And I've also made a recent recommendation on, and I'll conclude here, on saying that in the end we are looking for a solid goal on young people so that young people's development, including innovation, is really part of the post-2015 agenda. We want to see very clearly young people's priorities reflected in all the indicators, which will be then whether the SDGs goal or whatever goals we will call after September 2015. And the third scenario is saying what we have is in the high-level panel report recommendation, we have few priorities of young people which are clearly articulated. And lastly is the My World survey, which has just been brought on the screen. And I really encourage all of you to look at data.myworld2015.org, which has about 1.3 million people who have participated. But most critical thing is that out of that 1.3 million people who have participated, 800,000 are young people below the age of 30. So please, we are looking at innovation next year in June, and I would really like to say that young people are in the heart of innovation. We really need to support Miro and everybody to make this a fantastic event. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ravi. And now another highlight, it's Christina Stevens, award-winning author and filmmaker, and our advisor and benevolent friend on our journey on engaging youth in the UN system. And Christina will speak about Ted Turner as a global citizen who has really made a big impact with his philanthropic engagement and his media leadership. Christina, the floor is yours.
Yes, I guess I'm the inspirational moment here. And I'm actually going to speak to that drop of water, wherever that was in your vision, in your imagery, because that's when I said to Miro yesterday, what do you want me to speak about? And he said, the new thinking. And this is an interesting thing because, a drop of water can make a mighty ocean, and an ocean of voices can create waves of change. And we're all swimming in that ocean right now. And we're all swimming as fast as we can. Because of this global shift that we all are very, very aware that we're involved with. Small nations and fragile economies and vulnerable societies are now stepping up and being heard, which is magnificent. Young people if you shake and rattle and roll that a little bit longer, they will be heard too. Stronger developing countries are experiencing, big shifts. So no one is invisible, no one is immune any longer to this. With not just with NGOs, with corporations, with governments, with the youth, with and with civil society, there is no more them and us. We're all in together, and we know it. And we know we're writing the script. So, as polarity consciousness has now come to an end, as signified by the end of the Mayan calendar last year, and unity consciousness is now the new thought, and it's the path of the future. And our new operating system is so easy to access because it's right there in our heart, and that's the beginning of it all. That's the beginning of the system that you were talking about with the Commons, but where it begins is right here in each of our hearts, and I know that's what this initiative is going to be speaking to. I want to tell you a story, and I don't often tell a story, and I don't know if this story has actually been told in these hallowed halls, but it should have been, and it should be. Visionaries throughout time have made an indelible impact, sometimes, through just a whole body of their work, or occasionally through one selfless act that has just resonated around the world. And here, I want to tell you about one person who was ahead of his time with this thought that we are now encompassing, that we have now entered into at this moment, and ushered into in this unity consciousness. And as founder of CNN, he put vision back into television. He wanted to end the Cold War. And, instead he said, look, if we're sitting at tables and we're talking, we're not dropping bombs. So he just wanted to start the dialogue. And so he set up, when he started CNN, and he had no money. I mean, he really, he didn't know if he was always going to make payroll. He was never sure of this. But he set up news bureaus all over the world. Sadly now, Time Warner have shut them down, but he wanted live happening all over the world. He wanted everyone to enter into the dialogue. If a global leader wanted to know what was going on next door, at the nation next door, he turned on CNN. That's what he did. So anyway, but Ted felt very deeply about wanting to unite the world even more, and he looked to this magnificent organization, and he knew Kofi at that time, and he knew the UN were in arrears, and he was very worried about that. He was really concerned no one was listening to the UN. He was worried that we're going to close the doors because, there was a lot of money owed, and they weren't able to pay their bills. So, and he didn't like that they were struggling. And he and Kofi would talk about this often, apparently. And as the former Secretary General Kofi Annan tells it, it was that day in September, he said, we were talking about the arrears again. And Ted says, Kofi, I'm going to give you that $1 billion myself. And Kofi said, I thought it was just our ongoing joke. I thought he was just kidding me. He said, but then I looked into his eyes and I said, my God, he's serious. And the thing is, and what Ted believes is having vast sums of money or wealth really doesn't mean much. It's what you do with it. And he said, so you have to say, I can do better and I'll feel better if I give something up better than I will if I just keep it. And, at that time, $1 billion was actually, and I think it continues to be, the largest single human gift ever on the planet. And that was 15 years ago. And one thing he did was he changed the art of giving. But more than that, the UN Charter would not allow him to give them this gift. It was just illegal. So he started the UN Foundation, which has now evolved into something. And I don't work for the UN Foundation, so no one's paying me to say this. Okay. But it has evolved in a way that many would not expect, because it's gone from a traditional grant maker to an entirely actively involved problem solver all over the world, everywhere I go. I mean, last month I was walking down the street and I saw a little sign that said, "Come in and get a flu shot here, and a kid in Africa will get a flu shot, and this goes through the UN Foundation." So, I mean, and you've all heard of Girl Up. It goes on and on and on and on, what they're actively doing out there, and there's such connectors. We had a meeting there this morning, and it was rather amazing. I mean, to sit there and just kind of be connected with this project, to start to see how we can all begin to do it and do it together. And then Ted, of course, challenged Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, and then you know what happened there. They too, because Ted he doesn't mince his words, and if he's going to give you a dig and like make you feel like you better do something, he wasn't shy about it. But Ted is quick to tell you that you don't need money to make a difference. And this is something that, regardless of how much money he has, if you followed him walking down the street, you would see him. He would stop and pick up every piece of garbage or waste that is floating around. We don't let him come to New York too often because we never leave here. And in his office in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the young people that come in, and he drives an hour in, and he drives in an hour early every morning, and Ted doesn't know this even, but what he does is he goes around the parking lot and up and down the street that Ted takes his walk on and picks up every piece of paper and everything he can, because he knows if he doesn't, Ted will, and they'll never get him back into the office. So, this is something that, he lives by. It's acts of change. And, and the new thought stream is awake, and it's aware, and it's one of oneness. And because 2013, the sky's the limit now. We know we're writing our own script. And the way showers are among us. They're out there, they're in here, they're gathering together, and the future is going to come from our hearts. And, our hearts that are unified, but it's the hearts that open and available to inspiration, and that's where music comes from. It's the hologram of the universe. It's the universal language. It's the language we can all speak without, even opening our mouths, actually, sometimes. And it speaks to and comes from the heart, and that's where our real change is going to begin. So, I want you to imagine that you own the world. You own everything in it. You own all the trees in Central Park. You own all the dogs in the shelters. You own all the tigers that are fighting for survival out there. And they will tell you, we think their survival depends on us. Wrong. Our survival depends on them. So, I want you to imagine that this is all yours. You own it. You own Versailles in France. You own everything in front of your eyes. And so treat it with gentleness. Be a marvelous sovereign owner of this, because it's the truth. So thank you, and please take care of it with us together.
Thank you very much, Christina, for this wonderful and really extraordinary, inspiring speeches. That really gives us energy. And as regards Ted Turner, he is really, regarding our topic today, he is the most outstanding and historic figure in the whole history of the United Nations system. So it's really, in terms of drops, it's really one drop. It's one person really making a very big impact through his committedness, and that's what inspires our work, and we work along these lines. And we've had also today a meeting at the UN Foundation trying to link our efforts, and that's really very important also for the global challenges giving pledge idea that we have. It's, as you know, there are these giving pledge people, but only very few of them say, well, we want to support the United Nations, we want to support global causes. And Ted Turner was a wonderful role model for this, how much sense it makes and how much impact it can have. And thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful. With this, we come to Patrick Scarata, Friendship Ambassadors Foundation, and the topic is Music and Action for a Sustainable World. Thank you to be with us, Patrick.
Wonderful, Miro. Thank you so much, and it's really a pleasure to be among this group. Really very, very wonderful. I should say that I'm inspired. Christina, thank you very much for that, and also the many facts that I've learned just listening here. I can only say that maybe I can say by way of Monty Python's Flying Circus, and now for something completely different. My work is really work in the field, so perhaps it bubbles up to an area of concern that perhaps may be of use. But let me tell you a little bit about what the work of Friendship Ambassadors Foundation has been over the past 40 years and my own leadership of it over the past 20 years. Certainly some of you may know of the Youth Assembly at the United Nations. I know I have my colleague Beatrice Cord here from the Romanian mission to the UN, who's very, very active on our planning committee. I happen to know from text that there are some friends from France and elsewhere watching us webcast live. Hello, everyone. And they have been to the Youth Assembly. I really do want to talk about music, but I just wanted to mention that the Youth Assembly since 2002 has focused every year and now twice annually on filling a large room like this. Certainly in August, we filled the new General Assembly Hall, the temporary General Assembly Hall, to speak about empowering young people toward the success of the Millennium Development Goals and now the post-2015 agenda. I work very closely with the NGOs affiliated with DPI, and there's one of the leaders of the youth movement of NGO DPI out here as well. And I'm really grateful for the young people who have been involved in the Youth Assembly over these many years. We try to be very practical. Perhaps we're not as inspiring as Christina, but we look at the 8 MDGs and we try to figure out how we can help youth leaders and others around the world fulfill those goals and now move into the post-2015 agenda. Listening to Lashinka also, I was thinking about my own work in a kind of commons way. Since we began this program, and it began actually as a project of Reader's Digest in 1973, it was in order to link people together through cultural exchange, first and foremost. So I'd like to take you back to our mission and our vision. And we decided that music and related issues like dance, in some cases where language isn't a barrier, theater and visual arts, would be our means of communicating with young people worldwide. So that's where we began. We also began with volunteer service, and back in 1973, when we began, we brought on one of our very first cultural exchange tours in the United States, a young man, along with others, who landed in then Idlewild Airport, JFK Airport now, and we drove him across country in order to learn a little bit about the United States before he went to school in Macalester College. We were very proud that that person grew up to be the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan. Very interesting that he was on our very first tour. And subsequent to that, we created an opportunity for many young people to sing together. We felt that the common language of music, and this is where Miro and I have really met with like minds, that by singing together, we would be able to find a common bond. You can't sing in the key of H. Well, I do, but most people who sing within key structures. So we thought that would be a great place to start, and to have people dance together. And I know it sounds like a very soft vision, but you never know where it'll go. We had a young high school student who sang in one of our choirs, and she was a dedicated Soviet young woman from a country in Central Europe. And she felt that Men from the West mainly came to her country to make women prostitutes, and they were not to be trusted, except there was this small foundation that kept coming to her village and singing, and she wound up singing with them. She later grew up to be the current UN ambassador or ambassador to the UN from Romania, Simona Miculescu, one of, I think, the most powerful ambassadors we have at the UN. And Her Excellency, Ambassador Miculescu, has been a large supporter of our work. And recently, as some of you may know, we have published a new CD called The Singing Ambassadors for Peace, where 5 UN ambassadors have shed their daily work and their normal roles to come and sing 12 songs of peace on our new CD. Some of you may have been at the recent concert we had for the NGO community on December 5th. Others may have been with us recently in other areas. But let me wrap up very quickly to say that we have used music and dance predominantly to bring people together when they were young. Now, those people have grown up, and like Ambassador Miculescu and like Ahmed Al-Handawi, the envoy for youth, who at our last youth assembly reminded everyone in the room that he has frequent flyer miles at the youth assembly. He has been with us 6 times in a row. We have seen those young people grow into action from the arts, and even combining the arts and action. We're currently building a new resource center for the indigenous Shuar people of Ecuador, in central Ecuador. And it was actually started by several choirs who went to Limon and Daza outside of Cuenca and have created an opportunity to sing together. And that led to us beginning to build for that community and create action towards sustainable development. The Shuar community is in the rainforest right on the equator, and it had never really occurred to them to be able to use sustainable building techniques. We're working with them on this and many other opportunities, but this led from our work in music, and we strongly support Miro's work to do the same, to use music as a form to create action. Miro, I could go on with another 15 stories, but I'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. It was very inspiring.
And this brings us to Natasha Ardiani, mentioned already before by Ravi, that Indonesia is playing a very positive role in including youth in these debates at the UN. Natasha is the Associate Director of the President's Delivery Unit for Development Monitoring and Oversight of the Republic of Indonesia. And the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mira. Well, and thank you, Ravi, for reciting the work of High Level Panel and the whole engagement with youth and all of the outreach, and basically all of those outreach we have done that really brought us together, voices of people around the world. We received more than 5,000 submissions around the world by CEOs and NGOs, business, academics, everyone. So hopefully it's representative. But now that it's done, we have to really focus on the less than 24 months we have till September 2015 to really have a solid framework for partnerships in youth. And it is an exciting time for us, for Indonesia, to play a major role, not only in the region, but internationally, with our status as emerging economy and middle-income country. Young people have been giving a lot of significant input and engagement throughout the high-level panel outreach processes. But however, when it comes to youth, the problem with youth is that they're really disengaged with development. Having Ministry for Youth or National Youth Council does not really translate to engaging youth in development. And this is a really developmental problem, since youth accounted for 1.8 billion people today, which 90% of those living in the developing world. But engaging youth in development has several layers. The first one is to utilize youth as laborers, resources, employees. And second, youth as source of intangible resources that creates creativity, new thinking, innovation. And third, youth's role in development is as stakeholders who will bear the consequences of current government's policies. So what do we have to do? Engaging youth means creatively and strategically maximizing youth potential as dynamic resources for development. Concretely, engaging youth in development is incorporating youth interests in development policies. And if countries have to mobilize resources, one among other things that they will have to do is utilizing youth creatively to also enable innovation that youth can make if they have the space for it. Like Christina said, it's not about the money. It's about the space that the governments and other entities make able for youth to make the innovation itself. In Indonesia, hundreds and thousands of social enterprises are emerging, founded for different causes. One of the social enterprises I've been telling Christina about is the Guiding Lights of Archipelago. So this is a social enterprise started 2 years ago. They send health professionals, midwives, nurses to the most remote places in Indonesia, outer islands that are not being touched by development. And this partnership happens, although it was initiated by sort of a government entity, Special Envoy of MDGs, but it happened not funded by annual budget, not funded by the national budget, but funded by partnership from private sector and philanthropic foundations, civil societies, the local government. So the partnerships from local communities, international communities brought together to really help development in the really groundwork. So this is the partnership that we've been talking about. Success stories everywhere, but now we want to make it more concrete. And when also social enterprise uses crowdfunding to facilitate exchange between students from different backgrounds and ethnicities, religions, regions to learn about tolerance. Last year alone, Indonesia's creative industries employed 11.57 million people, accounting for 10.63% out of the country's employment so far, and contributing 6.3% of the GDP, or $7.4 billion. And approximately 80% of this new and emerging creative industry is carried out by young people. From fashion to photography, printing to publishing, research and development, computer and software, performing arts, etc. Those are the areas that young people can bring about change at to boost growth and development. So echoing Ravi's statement, I want to be brief here. It is our responsibilities to create this space where young people can engage with development in all levels and policymakers at large, where they can seek to innovate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natasha, for sharing your experience regarding global leadership on youth engagement on these global causes. With this, I would give the floor for 2 questions and a very brief wrap-up on the panel. We should finish at latest 1:10 So, please. Also, is Andrew here? Please, Andrew, announce your event. Yes, you should. Sylvester, here. You should press it. Yeah. Perhaps you have to come further here. Now you get
I apologize. This was covering it.
Okay.
No, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Miro, but also all the presenters on the panel for allowing me just a quick moment to speak. It's in some ways kind of a rather shameless plug for our own side event that we're hosting tomorrow. We're expecting the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations to come and host a side event, which is taking place at Room 7 at the North Lawn Building, to discuss resources, risks, and responsibilities. This is an issue that First Nations in Canada, who are one of the 3 Indigenous groups that are recognized in Canada and also the largest, are really facing with increased pressure to develop natural resources. But we see it as a broader conversation and something that communities across the world, not just Indigenous, but local communities, authorities, even regional and national governments are struggling with, is how to balance the sustainable development of natural resources with keeping our responsibilities to the environment and to Mother Earth. So there is a movement to lead and create sustainable development and healthy economies in a manner that will promote economic self-sufficiency, sustainable incomes over the long term, and respect for the environment. So tomorrow's event is aiming to spark discussion on promoting a major shift in the economic development paradigm at the community, regional, national, and global levels. Economic development does not necessarily need to come at the expense of the environment, and there are concrete examples that can be highlighted of communities leading the way in adopting sustainable livelihoods that promote development. So I will be quick, end it at that. I've got some posters I'll hand out later. Thank you very much.
The world and the United Nations can learn a lot from indigenous people, from First Nations, with regard to our relation to the natural environment and how to manage resources. So therefore, I'm happy to have you here and your announcement. The colleague from UN Foundation, would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you all for the lovely panel. Thank you also, Christina, for telling the wonderful story of the founder of the UN Foundation, Ted Turner. What really excites the UN Foundation here in particular, and along the lines of what I do, is the idea and the spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship. The UN Foundation, as of 3 years ago, has started what we call a Global Entrepreneurs Council, where we engage young very successful entrepreneurs in the work of the UN, and really try and bridge that gap to let everyone know that the UN is, in fact, open for business, so to speak, and is here to engage with so many diverse and different communities out there, from the private sector to the NGO community to those entrepreneurs who are creating apps that may have a local significance but also may have a very global impact application. So we work, as many of you all know, in many relevant areas to the mission of the UN, and we're really excited to support heavily the My World survey through the Millennium Campaign, and the elevation of the youth voice throughout the UN system.
Perspective.
Hi, everyone. Just thank you to the panel for this very fruitful discussion. I'm the social chair of the DPI NGO Youth Rep Committee, and within the Youth Rep Committee, we just established a research subcommittee to kind of keep track of all the work that youth reps all around the world are doing. And we also are trying to reach out to young people outside of the UN to show them that, just like us, they can find their own unique way to get involved in the MDGs and the soon-to-be SDGs, especially working with civil society organizations. So we're ready to collaborate with you and anybody else on this 15-15-15 initiative, because I think it's a great way to inspire people to make the small contributions that they can, because it'll allow them to see the bigger picture.
I would suggest we make a wrap-up session, starting with Ravi. Your concluding statement, 1 sentence, 2 sentences.
I only have one statement, which is really working with young people is, yes, it is accountability. We must do it. It has to happen. And as Amina Mohammed says, that the heavy lifting of the post-2015 agenda will be done by young people. So young people's partnership in the implementation of the post-2015 is the heart of the discussion that we're talking about.
Thank you. Christina?
Oh, well, I always end, whenever I talk, I always end it with this thing, because I'm a Post-it note. And on my Post-it note, I always encourage people to put, and it doesn't matter whether you're young, you're old, or whatever, I am you, you are me, we are one.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I think that the timing for this is really perfect. And I felt that everything that has led up to this has shown a real true picture of what's to come. And it's, sometimes you can't see things, but it's happening. So I'm just very inspired, and I really have a lot of a lot of hope for the youth and for everyone, because we have to do this together, no matter what age we are.
Thank you. Hope is very good.
Yeah, hope is absolutely paramount, and that struck me tonight. Each one of our panelists and also those that spoke from the floor are touching hearts. And those of you that touch hearts don't just touch them once, but that opens them very often and changes lives. And I just want to thank everybody here who is doing these things for people, because you don't realize the amazingly large wave effects that you're creating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're all about collaboration. So I've left a number of sheets of paper on the table there talking about programs that we have coming up, and we'd love to invite you into them. The Youth Assembly in February 5th and 6th coming up, our work in Barbados with the Barbados Mission on art, youth, and development in Barbados, and then later here on April 4th. In a conference that we'll call Humanicy, looking at the humanities and diplomacy. And we hope to also be able to support Miro in his great work with music and action towards sustainability. We invite you all to learn more about us and join in with our programs if you can. Best of luck with all what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Natasha.
Well, like I said before, we only have 22 months left, so make it count. And it's not about what the world can do for us, but what we can do for the world.
Thank you very much. And my last thought would be to leave you with this image. It should really be something that goes very deep into your mind and heart. It's this new kind of thinking of leadership of all of us for achieving these goals for a sustainable world and for a just world. And being here in this trusteeship council chamber, really with this wonderful statue, which can be somehow also regarded as a symbol of future generations, we really have to, with a deep sense of responsibility, act and become more active in supporting the United Nations. And I hope that our initiatives, our multi-stakeholder partnership, GloCha, will guide the way and that we will succeed. Wish you all the best. Bye.
Thank you.